Welcome, everybody, to the first Three-Man Weave College Hoops Basketball Show presented by SportsbookReview.com. We are going to be coming to you live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern on this channel. So if you're enjoying it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Most of the time, we'll be talking through the day's game slate, game by game, some of the biggest ones, hitting on each and talking possibly some picks. But today, we're talking futures. And for that, I am joined by Mr. Ky McKeon and Matt Cox. Hi, how are we doing this morning?
Jim, I'm doing great, man. I got my setup behind me. First live show of the year. We got about 50 of these. So, Jim, there's a few butterflies in my basket, but I'm doing okay.
Matt, are you feeling similar?
Yeah, I guess, Jim. It's just only natural. But the silver lining in this internal nervousness is I look off to my right and my second monitor, and I see a big, fat, full slate of games for Wednesday. The time has arrived. It's time to play hoops. So, I mean, that's really what we're here for, right?
That's right. They're popping up on the rotation number, but we are still 2 days away, just under 48 hours out from the Towson-San Francisco tip-off to start the season. Before we get there, though, fellas, we got to talk futures. I mean, we got to dig into this market because, look, there are no lines on games, but there are lines on teams to win the national title. We certainly have some opinions about that. I wrote an article on our website, 3-man-weave.com, but today we're going to opt to go kind of team by team and tier by tier, talking about teams with similar odds and giving you our takes on which way we lean among these teams. And let's just start off by a couple of top five teams here, one of whom we've probably been a little low on for people that know us throughout this offseason. But let's talk Baylor and Iowa, two teams that kind of were different last season, where Iowa was more of a top 30 team with a National Player of the Year candidate, where Baylor was top 5 team. I think they had lost one game for most of the season before the end of the year where they tripped up a little bit. But these are two teams a lot of people are looking at as top 5 coming into the season. The odds seem to align with that, finding around 10-1, give or take, at each site. Which one of you has a real strong opinion to start us out here? Maybe I'll start with Ky, because I know we've talked a lot about Iowa this offseason, but not on this program. So where do we stand with the Iowa versus Baylor debate?
Yeah, I'm gonna lay it out, Jim, for our new listeners here, our watchers, our viewers. We're just not a big believer in Iowa. You know, they're a good team, but they're not a national title contender in our eyes. Certainly shouldn't be priced as a top 5 team in terms of the future. And the defense, Jim, is one of the main reasons why we're not a believer. You know, they're a borderline 100th last year in KenPom defensively. That's not good enough. You need to be elite on both ends of the floor if you're going to compete for a title. You know, everyone knows about the offense. It's there. It's going to be good once again. But the defense holds his team back. And, you know, secondly, it's precedence. Fran McCaffrey, we've talked about on our podcast, never finished higher than 22nd in KenPom. Certainly not the end-all, be-all in terms of standards, KenPom's rankings, but certainly something to anchor to when you're looking at these sort of futures. And he's never made a Sweet 16. If you want a more qualitative observation, it's just a team that lacks precedence, lacks defensive ability.
Matt, you lean the same way?
Yep, Jim, if I had a gavel, I'd be banging it for Baylor right now, emphatically. I'll give you the Baylor side of the coin here. So last February, when Baylor was on their scorching hot surge for the Big 12, they were actually 12-1. So roughly around the same price where you can find them now in a lot of these places. And from my vantage point, I feel like I'm more confident and feel more sure about this Baylor team right now looking ahead to 2021 than I did at that juncture last season. The continuity, the experience they have coming back. So I guess from that vantage point, I like this price. However, we want to caution our viewers out there. The importance of price shopping is something we need to hammer home to everyone out there watching. Circa Odds just posted their lines 2 days ago. You can actually get Baylor at 20 plus 2,100. So almost double the value there that you're seeing at some other places. So again, folks, do not just look at the rank order of the odds. Make sure you try and shop around books if you have that luxury. Obviously, you live in the States and you're betting through a legal book. Not always an option, but if you do, Colorado residents, Vegas residents, like our fellow resident Jim here, please do that, because at Baylor, they're fourth. They're currently the 4th highest ranked team in Circa's odds, but you're getting double the value that you're getting at other books. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So make sure you're tracking that. Do not get sucked into those high hold percentages that some of these books have for you. Do your homework, folks.
Yeah, line shopping is huge. I've done a little bit of that out here, as Matt alluded to. One other thing I'd mention here, both Baylor and Iowa are going to be in just brawls of conferences this year. Both the Big 12 and the Big 10 are really, really strong. They're going to be playing tough slates, probably 18 to 20 game slates, whereas somebody that you might find similar odds, like Villanova, is a heavy favorite in the Big East. And if they're able to run away with that conference, it's a lot easier to get that 1 seed. And just historically, it's a lot easier for a 1 seed to make the Final Four. The path is simpler, and it's just you kind of rise to the top if you're a 1 seed. So be wary of that. Gonzaga is another team that we're a big fan of here. That has a little bit of an easier path to a championship season in their conference.
Yeah, and right, Jim, maybe I'll go one more thing here, just for setting the stage for these going forward. Things we like in title contenders, right? And Baylor has them. We look at good guards that can carry a team, right? And that's Jared Butler for Baylor, All-American point guard. We look at elite defense, and we look at coaching. Those are 3 main pillars, if you will. If you have any more to add, Jim, let me know. But Baylor has all of those in spades, and being priced as the 4th, shortest odds out there. There's value in that play.
Yep, I'm right with you, Kai. And we're going to move on to another little pairing of teams here, that another Big Ten squad that has risen up the rankings this offseason, most notably because of Aya Sunu and Kofi Coburn returning to school. And that's Illinois, a team that is kind of up in the top 10-ish of most futures odds, which surprisingly finds them even with, Matt, your Duke Blue Devils, who are traditionally, this blue blood national title favorite. They've fallen down just a little bit, kind of like in that 8th to 10th area. And this is another kind of battle of proven, returning, potentially all-American talent with Illinois, and more of a precedence with Duke. Matt, I'll go to you first just because you are the Blue Devil man. You grew up a Dookie fan. You had no decision in the matter. I'll defend you there. But where do you lean at these two here?
Yeah, for those of us, or for those of you tuning in who can zoom in on the camera, you might be able to see me when my Duke attire with my family at the Final Four to my left. As you mentioned, I had no choice. I was brainwashed at a young age, much to the chagrin of my fellow IU alumnus comrades out there. It's a good comparison, Jim, back to the Baylor-Iowa matchup we just talked about. In the comments section, we have Joseph Gomez. Joseph, welcome to the program. Talking about when's the last time Big 12's actually won a title. I think Big 10 has a really long streak going forward as well. I don't really look at like the conference, drought, if you will. I think it's kind of just an anecdote that's piled up over time. I don't really put much stock in that. However, I will say that Big 10 teams this year, I'm just staying away from them from a title perspective. I just don't see many elite teams. So in the context of the Duke versus Illinois, I think Duke's a no-brainer. Illinois has more experience, more continuity, which you would think would bode better in a COVID-disrupted offseason. You're getting the big, bad, evil empire, blue blood Dukies, like slightly under the radar. That's like never happened in Coach K's tenure. I'm all in on Duke here. I think there's actually good value.
Yeah, they're incredibly underrated. It's very weird to see a Duke team that's actually underrated this year. And I really don't know why. They're returning 2 5-stars in Matthew Hurt and Wendell Moore, and you add 3 more 5-stars. One guy, Jalen Johnson, is a guy we think can be an All-American this year. So it's very weird to see Duke flying under the radar. I feel like if Kentucky was across the front of their jerseys, they'd be consensus top 5 team. KenPom's got them 3rd. We have them 3rd in our rankings, I believe. I don't see why they're underrated, but I'm glad they are. I'll happily take this future because, it's a team that can certainly, at the very least, make a deep run in the tournament.
Yeah, to me, it's a little bit of Duke fatigue, maybe, if people just Duke, they get these top 5 guys every year, and we're coming off a season or an NBA draft where they didn't have anybody go in the lottery or the first round even. And people are probably looking at this team again and saying, I don't know who the star is. Who's the one that jumps out? Because they're not a top 5 recruit. Even Matthew Hurt and Wendell Moore, the returning guys aren't elite, and they didn't really show a ton in their freshman years. But I kind of like a Coach K team with a little bit more experience, a little bit more depth. I lean Duke here as well. Matt, you mentioned the Big Ten drought, though. We've got 2 teams coming up here next that, one of them was the last Big Ten team to win a title way back in 2000, and Wisconsin almost got there in 2015. We're talking Wisconsin versus Sparty. This one's kind of a toss-up here. I know coming into the show, I knew exactly where your guys' heads lie on the Duke and Baylor lines, but these two, I'm not really sure. So I'm going to go to Kai first here. We're going to talk Big Ten. I grew up a Badger fan. I think I lean Sparty, but I'm curious where your head's at.
It's 20 years, Jim. I didn't realize that was the drought for a Big Ten team winning a national title. That's crazy to me. A couple things to consider with Wisconsin and Michigan State. I'll say from pure looking at the team perspective this year, Wisconsin, in my opinion, is the better play. I don't think they're going to win the national title, but I think they're a pretty quote-unquote safe bet to make it to Elite Eight, where you can set up some hedging opportunities. I like their experience coming back. Micah Potter's addition last year in second semester really changed their level of where they can play to. However, Michigan State has the precedence. Tom Izzo has a track record of lifting up teams in March. There's a scenario, a super mega happy scenario, where Rocket Watts and Aaron Henry rise to all conference levels. Joey Hauser's really good. Josh Langford is somehow fully healthy. He has 9 lives, apparently. And they go on a run. And that's a very possible situation. I just think the more likely scenario is they fall a little bit short, which is why I'm preferring the Badgers at this price when they're about even right now in the futures market.
Yeah, it's a conundrum for me. On one hand, you have I think Sparty's just slightly the better team, which is, I can't believe I'm saying that in the wake of Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman's departure. But on the other hand, you have Scotty with all the continuity coming back. Again, we'll keep hammering home that theme of continuity, teams that know who they are. They enter the year with an identity. Their roles are intact. They're solidified in stone. But ultimately, what to watch here is, Tom Izzo has the knack for, he likes to kind of fly under the radar the first couple months of the year, then he turns it on in March, right? March Izzo is always the, quintessential cliche.
January, February,
right.
Izzo, April,
but he usually does
May.
it, right? He usually delivers on that. So now that we're starting a season that's, 3 weeks tardy relative to normal standards, it's almost like the runway for that natural takeoff period, which he usually starts to where the Spartans usually hit their stride. Maybe that shortened runway is going to actually be a detriment to the Spartans. All that said, I'm sticking with Izzo. I think Sparty's just a better team, more talented team across the board, and I'm going to go with Spartans here.
I think the Spartans are a little higher ceiling, where we're not quite as sure coming into the season. I mean, Kai said Wisconsin probably got the higher floor, but I think if I'm taking a shot at a national title, I'll ride that slightly higher ceiling if Henry and Watts break out, and then Badgers. I love them, but I don't know if the top end talent is there to get all the way to the national title.
Yeah, you got to remember, you're betting on upside here, folks. It's a ceiling bet, and as Kai mentioned, if once you're thinking about can your team get to the Sweet 16. And then from there, you have opportunities to hedge if you make a pretty decent size wager. So it's kind of, the future strategery needs to be wired into your brain as you're making these wagers.
Big to have that strategery, Matt.
Strategery.
Strategery.
It's a real word.
Yes.
All right, let's talk 2 other teams that we, I think, collectively are very high on. That it's tough to make a differentiation. They're similarly priced. I think they're fairly well coached. We like the rosters quite a bit. Maybe underperformed last year relative to talent, or just had some unlucky endings to games. This is Tennessee and Texas Tech, a couple of teams that graced our top 10 in our countdown, or maybe our top 11. But now they're being priced probably around 15-ish, top 15, maybe top 20. Early in the offseason, you could have gotten both these teams even better. I think I got them both at 50-1 back in sometime in May. And people started to catch on. They're both bringing in a lot of talent, both well coached. In Texas Tech, Chris Beard took a team with one NBA player to the national title game a couple seasons ago. So he's got that higher ceiling. He's shown that in the NCAA tournament in just a very short career, whereas Barnes, I think, only has 1 Final Four to his credit. Shout out TJ Ford. Both of you guys, I'm not really sure which way you lean on this one either. Kai, maybe we'll start with you again here. Are you a Barnes guy, or are you just riding the Beard train? I know you didn't shave this morning, or quite take it all off. You left just a little bit.
Right. Well, Jim, as we said pre-show, I want to be, going through puberty instead of prepubescent for the fans out there. I got to let them know I'm not 12 years old. Just a little bit of dirt on there, right? I think Tennessee and Texas Tech are 2 of the best values on the board. I think I saw 28-1. I'm sure there's better odds out there if you line shop. Tennessee might be the most underpriced team in my eyes. They could be the most complete team in the country. There's just nothing wrong with. There's no weakness in this team. The defense is going to be elite. They have a stud point guard in Vescovi, rising sophomores, which we really like, that freshman to sophomore leap in talent. They bring in young talent, Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson, both 5-star recruits. Just tons of depth. And Jim, to your point about coaches, Rick Barnes is a coach that I trust. Maybe not so much as Chris Beard, but certainly a guy who I think can lead this team to a Final Four.
Yeah, I want to trust Barnes, Jim, but the game against Purdue a couple years ago, and I believe that was a round of 32 or Sweet 16, that's still just branded into my brain right now that I can't. It's very much a stain on his coaching resume. I think you guys hit it on the head. I would lean Tennessee, although I want to talk Texas, another burnt orange team. I think we're going to get into later, correct? They're a team I love their upside, and you're getting some great value with them at a few bucks out there.
Yeah, Texas, that's a coaching situation, though, Matt. Do you trust Shaka Smart, and do you trust him with hair? That's what I got to ask.
With hair, so I'm hoping that the hair, there's some more like neurons that have grown through there. So I'm inclined to think he'll be actually a better coach this season. Yeah. You just don't find teams with that much continuity and experience. BartTorvik.com, very popular analytics site that I know a lot of folks out there listening probably tune in. So there's a reason why they're ranked at the top of the totem pole. You just don't see this type of combination of, basically 10 plus 4-star recruits. You have a Skywalker, Greg Brown coming in this year. You have Andrew Jones, who was a monster down the stretch. Again, I'll say it, we're betting on upside, we're betting on ceiling. I see Circa Odds has them, or Circa Sportsbook has them at plus 6,000, 60-1. I mean, there's a scenario in which Texas, who I think we have rated closer to the 20 to 30 end of the spectrum overall, maybe knocking on top 15 door. But we all would agree, I think, that their ceiling is as high as anyone in the country in that range of teams. So I think they're a great value pick.
Are you worried about them losing Luke Yaklich on the sideline?
Luke?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're going to go on the Texas tangent, Jim, we love alliteration here, so that's going to be a theme also in our shows or so. 4 straight years under 500 or at 500 in the Big 12 for Shaka Smart. He had essentially the same team last year, sans Greg Brown, and he wasn't going to make the tournament. You could argue his seat would be very hot right now had COVID not canceled the NCAA tournament, because Texas would have been on the outside looking in. So does Greg Brown vault this team to national title contender? It's possible. I do not think so. I will not be betting Texas, although, Matt, Circa Sports 60-1, that's crazy value. I'm seeing other places where they're 28-1, price the same as Tennessee and Texas Tech.
Yeah, line shop, folks. If you like Texas, make sure you find the place with the highest odds, at least that you can get it at. So we'll keep that going, that theme. We're going to talk Arizona State versus Houston next, which are two, I would say, dichotomous teams, where one is all defense. Houston, we trust Kelvin Sampson. We know what they're going to be physically on the defensive end. They're going to push you around, pain to play against. Then you got Arizona State, just kind of guard you, bring back Remy Martin, you bring in Josh Christopher, Marcus Bagley, still got Alonzo Verge there. You got a ton of scoring in the back court. But I'm not sure about the physicality and the paint, whether they're going to defend. So is this a little bit like the Baylor-Iowa debate here, just a JV version? Kai, what do you think about that?
I like that comparison, the JV version. Houston feels like Wisconsin to me, where it's a high floor. I don't think they can quite get all the way, but Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in the country, hands down. He will have this team ready to play. They'll play physical. I think they're locked to get a couple rounds into the tournament at least. Arizona State, I'm kind of worried about. Of course, we can talk about the defense all day long. I'm worried about the ball sharing on the offensive end. So you have Remy Martin, who is clearly the alpha, getting All-American nods, but you also have Josh Christopher, who's coming in as a top 10 recruit, certainly looking to score, looking to make a name for himself. And then Alonzo Verge has emerged as an NBA candidate. We know he likes to gun. He hit like 43 points last year off the bench. Is there enough ball to go around for these three scorers? We know they play fast, but that could be an issue down the road, maybe something you should consider for a future.
Arizona State feels like, if I'm an odds maker, Arizona State is a team that I'm hoping is this big, fat, alluring carrot where people that are attracted to the loud, shiny offseason that Bobby Hurley had with Josh Christopher and the recruits he brought in there, Marvin Bagley's little brother as well, and Remy Martin returning. I think they're going to get a lot of sucker money, to be blunt. So don't be one of those people, folks. This team does not play defense. We've seen this movie before. We all remember when they went to Kansas and knocked off the Jayhawks at Fog Allen, only to tumble down, those basically end up close to falling out of the tournament picture. So we just haven't seen Hurley get to that top 15 gear and sustain it for an entire season. And without Romello White's physicality inside, I don't trust this team playing any defense at all. On the other hand, Houston plays elite defense, and that is as safe as death and taxes. Take the Cougars. Don't overthink this one.
I believe Arizona State's highest finish under Hurley is 49th in Ken Pom. Yep. That is not great for precedent for being an actual national title contender. All right, let's move on to the next one here. West Virginia, and we're bringing back up Texas Tech because they are two similar teams in the Big 12, and we really love both these coaches, Bob Huggins, Chris Beard. Both teams are going to play physical defense, whereas Arizona State and Houston were kind of opposite images. These two are very similar. We know what we're going to get with the defense, but do we trust either offense enough to get to the level of a national title contender? West Virginia's got Miles McBride. He's probably the difference maker or potentially the difference maker as a rising sophomore. Whereas Texas Tech, maybe you look at Namari Burnett or even senior Kyler Edwards. Which one of these teams has the offensive pop to you guys? Matt, going back to you right away.
I think I like Texas Tech's offensive upside better, but I think the floor is higher for West Virginia because we know that we saw what they did last year. We know, even if they don't shoot well, but they shot atrociously last season, they're going to get second, third, even fourth shot opportunities on the boards with the two enforcer beasts inside that they have there. But Miles McBride's really the key, right? I think he has the chance to lift this offense out of the gutter. Also, Kendrick Johnson, the number 3 overall JUCO recruit, got a ton of buzz coming out of the JUCO ranks. So, maybe those two guys can be swing factors. Ultimately, you're trusting coaching here more than anything, and the defense on both ends. Is the upside, as high as like Gonzaga or even Duke? Maybe, but I just think you're playing. You're either one of these teams. You're betting on a safe top 10, top 15 squad, a top 4 or 5 seed that, as Kai mentioned earlier, can get to the Sweet 16. Good shots gets the Elite 8, which sets up good hedging opportunities for you for a Final Four and championship game.
Yeah, two teams that are priced way, way higher than they should be. These two teams could both finish in the top 10 by season's end. Chris Beard, I alluded to earlier, he might be the best coach in the country. What he does with the talent at his disposal, I mean, he has great talent this year. And both ends of the floor. He runs good offense. Everyone talks about his no-middle defense being his hallmark, and it is. His offense is good. He runs good sets. His players buy into what he's doing. I'm curious how Mac McClung fits into that equation. I think that's something that the viewers will learn about us as the season goes on. We're not huge Mac McClung fans in this system, but he is a guy. If you want to point to somebody who can lift an offense, maybe he's that guy that puts it all together for them. They finally have a scorer that can go get them 20 points or hit a late shot clock shot, something they haven't had last year, certainly.
Yeah, that's kind of what their offense has evolved down to late in the shot clock. Is Keenan Evans got them to the Elite 8. Jarrett Culver and kind of Matt Mooney got them to the national title game. They need that late shot clock creator. That's, is it Burnett? Is it McClung? Is it Jamarius Burton coming in from Wichita State? That's not really his game. He's more of a physical defender. So it'll be interesting to see if someone can step up to that role. If they do, I ride Texas Tech here. I think I like that slightly higher offensive ceiling, even though we don't know exactly where it's going to come from yet.
Quick devil's advocate question for both of you here. We've talked about 3 of the top 4 Big 12 teams. Is there a concern we have with in a relatively reduced non-conference season? We've already seen Baylor's big game against Arizona State be canceled, where they beat each other up in conference, which in the past, if they've all had sterling non-con resumes to hang their hat on, it hasn't really affected their seeding. But this year, it could, right, where they actually could drop down a seed line 2 or 3 relative to past years. And that's just, you look at the history over the course of the tournament, the higher seed you get, the better chance you have of advancing further. That's just the way it works. Are we concerned that some of these Big 12 teams, specifically the top 4 teams with Kansas, Baylor, Texas Tech, West Virginia, do they have overinflated odds because of that scenario this year? Or am I overthinking that? I think the answer is likely overthinking that.
I think there's some relevance to it. I mean, like I kind of mentioned at the top with the Big 12 and the Big 10, where these teams are just going to beat each other up like crazy. I mean, there's a few Big 10 teams that are only playing 5 non-conference games. You get 20 conference games, and you could go 11-9, look like not that good of a team. But if you'd have built this great non-conference resume in a normal season, you might be a 4 seed or a 3 seed. So I do think that matters. Like, Kai, do you kind of lean the same way? I mean, that's definitely what I think.
It's hard to say. I think it's going to be a crapshoot, and we've heard the committee say they're going to rely on a lot of eye tests this year. So if you see a team like, let's say Baylor goes 11-9 in the conference, won't happen. But let's say they do. I don't see Baylor getting dropped to like a 6 seed, right? I think they're still going to be fairly highly seeded. if they get these non-conference games continually canceled. I think they're going to rely on the eye test a lot. I think analytically they're still going to look very good, and the committee might rely on that more this season as well.
It's a little like the CFP in football, where if a team starts high, it's hard to they don't drop as far. Like one
inertia, Jim. Inertia.
Yes, inertia indeed. All right, before we give our favorite title picks, let's talk this intermediate tier, kind of 50-ish to 1, maybe 50 down to 100. Teams like Florida, teams like LSU, Arizona, even Memphis I would throw in there. My favorite, Alabama, big Tide fan here. But Auburn was maybe going to fit in here until they slapped themselves with a postseason ban yesterday, trying to skirt the NCAA's punishment a little bit. But where are you guys looking in this tier? Which team are you really aiming at? Kai, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, I'll split it here because you mentioned Memphis, who's actually I'm seeing a lot higher than these guys, so longer odds, which I love. But we'll get there in a second. If you're looking at teams similarly priced, like you're looking at Florida, LSU, Arizona, I think LSU is not a bad bet if you're comparing them to Florida. Like I said earlier, we like guards that can carry teams in the tournament. Experienced point guards, Javonte Smart is definitely that sort of player for LSU. And they have an All-American candidate in Trendon Watford who, we've talked about on our podcast, is getting not a lot of buzz nationally for somebody that could absolutely make an All-American team. Florida has the talent. We just don't trust Mike White very much. And then I think it's ridiculous that Arizona's priced the same as these two teams. There's just way too many unknowns with them. From a program perspective, they'll still be pretty good. They're just not a title contender or anywhere near that, in my opinion.
And they might ban themselves from the postseason, too. They could pull an Auburn in this pandemic.
Yeah. I don't know, Jim, I'm torn. This tier's tough for me. I've seen Connecticut, UConn all over the place in terms of where you want to line shop. Again, make sure to check out SBR.com, the odds section. You should be able to find plenty of places to compare there. But the issue...
Yeah, we might try to throw that in the description of the YouTube video once we're wrapped up here and try to get that. So that it's just easy clickable, the futures link there. Yep.
It's a great plug. It's a great plug.
Good, very good, Jim. UConn, again, this is a team that potentially maybe without one of their best players early on in the season, or at least at bare minimum, probably not at 100% with a Cook, just a weapon, Swiss Army knife type defender guy. We see real upside with this sophomore class. I've seen them as high as 40 to 1, but I believe there's some places out there you can find them closer to 100 to 1. I'd be looking at dabbling this team anything around 75 to 1. I think they have real top 10 upside. Again, a team that can make a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type run. And then from there, it's just, it's a crapshoot.
Matt, pick your Hurley. Dan or
I lean Dan, Jim, and I think I'm biased because as an elder brother to a younger brother, I just think there's a little more of a seasoned maturity edge there. So yeah, I'll ride with Big Bro.
That's not what I expected, Mr. D.
No.
My dad is somewhere probably off in the distance right now crying as he listens to this broadcast. As Bobby Hurley was his all-time favorite player. He bought me a Sacramento Kings Hurley jersey the year he got drafted, which was an all-time jinx. So
popular jersey.
I feel bad about that. Yeah, it was. Big-time seller.
Lots of kids had Bobby Hurley Sacramento Kings jersey growing up.
Anti-bias. This is Matt trying to fight his bias again here, folks. He will do that all season long. All right, before we wrap up here, guys, let's get to our favorite bets. Maybe it's a team we talked about earlier, maybe it's not. I want to hear who you're actually, where would you put your money based on current prices? Of course, you're going to line shop and find the best one. But Kai, which team are you zeroing in on? Whether it's a favorite team or teams, I'll give you multiple options here. Whether it's a favorite or somebody in the middle tier where you just like the upside and the odds. Where's your head at?
Jim, I'm kind of more conservative when it comes to the futures market. I bet on teams that I think can legitimately win a national title and not necessarily get far enough to hedge. I don't do good math, Jim. I know I'm an accountant, but I need to do gooder math to really go that far. So Gonzaga for me is a no-brainer bet. They are obviously the number one team in the country per these futures markets, but they're the best team in the country. There you go, Jim. It's a sweet shirt. It's like the Wolf shirt, but in Gonzaga form. Most complete team, well coached. They've been there before to the title. I think they're a safe bet, as safe a bet as you can get in the futures market. Long shot wise, I said earlier, Memphis. This is a team, ironically, that's being underrated this year after being overrated to the moon last season. Tons of sophomores coming back. Musa Cisse is a 5-star recruit. You add Landers Nolly. You can get them 75, 100 to 1. Why not? Take a flyer. This team could be Final Four good. Excuse me. Wow. Pardon me. If everything clicks, they have the athleticism to get there. I just think that I'm more so conservative and bet the higher favorites closer to the top of the board.
Jim, I know you're a resident futures expert here, so I want to give you the floor to spew out a few different options. I just want to reinforce Kai's Zag pick. They were 14-1 when they went off last season to start. They actually were up to 7-1 to win the title, I believe, by mid-February. So now you're getting them at roughly 10-1, depending on where you look. And to me, that's like a huge misalignment in value, given that I thought they were one of the best teams at that point last season. One of probably a small handful who could have won it, but this year I view them, I think we all do, on a class of their own. So, to get them anything around 10-1, I think it's a slam dunk. As Kai mentioned, I would be shocked if you're not sitting with juicy hedging opportunities by the time Final Four, whatever that is, knock on wood, rolls around. So don't
hedge the Zags.
Also, Jim, I think you want to tread lightly with that. I think you had a bad experience by not hedging the Zags way back when they played UNC. Am I wrong?
I had them 50-1, so that was it's different than hedging at 10-1.
That's
I hedged enough to just make a little bit of money, but yeah, no, they're the most complete team. This is Mark Few's best recruiting class ever. It's his first ever 5-star. Jalen Suggs, a top 10 recruit, and he's bringing back experience with Corey Kispert, Joel Ayayi, a breakout sophomore candidate, Drew Timme. As I just showed the shirt, that's the team. You can get them double figures, 10 or higher in the odds. I think that's the bet. It doesn't feel great betting maybe the odds-on favorite, but if they're the best team and they should be like 6-1, as they kind of should be in my eyes, I think that's where you go. And then I also, in my column on 3manweek.com, I also picked Villanova, who at that point I got at 20-1, and I think you're probably going to be hard-pressed to find them better than 15 now, but if you do, look, Jay Wright's won in the tournament multiple times. He's got a senior point guard in Colin Gillespie that can set things up. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, just a very obvious sophomore breakout candidate there, former 5-star recruit himself. And you have the wild card of Brian Antoine, if he can ever get healthy, a top 15 recruit last year who barely cracked the rotation, never really got things figured out after a shoulder injury. But I love the upside. I love the coaching with Jay Wright. So those are my top two. I know they're two high teams. I did briefly touch on Alabama, though. I got to touch on the Tide. Nate Oates, he's been a favorite of mine as a coach, and he's got a roster that really fits. He wants to run up and down. He can go 10 deep. He's got shooting. He's got versatile bigs. I think the value has been bet down. They were up near triple digits. I think I got 100-1. Maybe they're more 60 to 80-1. But I still think that team could really rise up the rankings once we see them on the court, once they start running people up and down. And I like the Tide. Fellas, anything else? I mean, we've really run through the gamut of futures talk here, but I'll leave the floor open to you. Jump in if you got anything.
I want to jump in real quick on Villanova. We talked about conferences. Villanova, to us, is a tier above the second-place team in the Big East, Creighton. So if you're looking at a team that's going to dominate its conference and get a high seed in the tournament, Villanova is, just like Gonzaga, a good bet in terms of that perspective. I think it's a team that's going to win the Big East fairly easily and end up with a 1 seed in the tournament. And you like that draw if you're looking for a futures bet.
Jim, I will throw in the Pony Express, our baby boys for the last 2 years.
Oh, look at you.
The odds, again, all over the place. Let's say it one more time. Folks, line shop. Wait, what? Say it again?
The Pony Express is who? Say who they are.
SMU, that's right. We felt that people probably don't know who the Pony Express is unless
We're
you're
not
a diehard fan
Express.
of ours. Yes.
Come on.
Well, it dates back to the 1980s when they had Eric Dickerson, Thunder and Lightning of football. So deep cut reference out there. But this team is, the total package. They got experience. And if Yornay can ever, actually get on the floor and be effective, that's a game-changing shot blocker for a defense that was a little shaky last year. We know the offense under Tim Yankovic is going to execute with, pristine precision. I just think this is a great value bet. They've been underrated the last 2 years. I think this just feels like the right year they finally break through. And if they don't, it's kind of one of those fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me type thing. So I will go back to the well until I'm proven wrong, which I very well could be given their last 2 years of disappointment.
SMU, awesome team to watch. They're a little scary because they kind of follow the Iowa-Arizona State trend of not sure if they can defend. That's where the Yornay piece is huge. We'll see if he can get healthy and eligible. I think he's still waiting on a waiver from the NCAA. But that wraps up our first show today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for commenting. Please keep doing that. Like the video, subscribe to the SBR YouTube channel. And this will be up on the site later if you missed anything. But that pretty much wraps it up. We'll be here same time, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for this guy. But I'll be up and ready to talk hoops. And we'll see you tomorrow.